60 The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. The bum rushing of border security in the El Paso sector that everyone was talking about as the incident went viral drew this response from White House spokeswoman Karine Jean-Pierre. KJP, well, what you saw there is the fault of Republicans.
I really truly believe that's a question for, the Republican governor of Texas, right? This is something that he should address, that he should actually speak to. The president has worked with Congress in the Senate, as I just spoke to, about getting an immigration bill done, making sure that we deal with the border challenges that we see, that we're now seeing, and you have a governor of Texas who has continued to politicize this. I do want to say we are grateful for the Border Patrol's quick work to get the situation under control and apprehend the migrants. So that's important. But congressional Republicans need to move on this.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it was thank you for apprehending them so that you could escort them into the country, which, of course, is what will happen. Donald Trump had a message over the weekend that he posted before the conversation turned to what he can or can't post today with respect to that judgment in Manhattan. This is continuing the thematic that's been a Trump staple ever since the murder of Lake and Riley. Biden's border bloodbath.
It's Biden's border bloodbath. There's never been anything like it. Every day, Joe Biden is setting loose thousands of unvetted, unscreened, military-aged men into the United States from parts unknown. Americans like Lake and Riley and Travis Wolf are being murdered, and they're being murdered. It's horrible what's going on. Our people are being murdered. You have to understand, people are pouring into our country at levels that we've never seen before. 15 million people, in my opinion, thus far. It'll be close to 20 million people by the time we get this guy out. That's almost bigger than any state in the union. And they're coming in from jails and prisons. They're coming in from mental institutions and insane asylums. They're terrorists. They're human traffickers. And they traffic in women. That's what they want to traffic in. That's what they want to do. And we had it almost stopped. We had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border probably in the history of the world. Every day, innocent citizens are being killed, stabbed, shot, raped, and murdered because of Biden migrant crime. It's a new word, a new term. It's migrant crime, but we call it Biden migrant crime because he's responsible for it 100%. Yet the same fake news media that is pushing one hoax after another never wants to talk about that.
For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Chris Clem, former Yuma Sector Border Patrol Chief. Chris, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. Glad to be on. Always good to be on in Chicago. You know, I'm very fond of that city. I spent, I guess about 6 weeks up there about 10 years ago, 12 years ago at Chicago Booth. And obviously my friend Brian Urlacher, Chicago Bear legend, I've taken him down the border a couple times. So
that's right.
Good to be on the radio and on the air in Chicago.
It's interesting you say that because after Urlacher's visits to the border, he was pretty outspoken. He came on our show and talked about his experience too. And this is a while back already. But everybody could see what was happening. And then basically what we've seen, as far as I can tell, is the Biden administration using an accelerant of invitation to come. And word gets around pretty quickly in circles that want to come to this country or want to move people into this country, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That criminal network is so rapid. Anytime there's been any kind of adjustment or change in policy, good, bad, or otherwise, they have a way to connect back to source countries, back to the network, to either say, keep coming, or hold up, don't come here, go someplace else. And the accelerant was basically 94 executive orders within the first hours and days and months of this administration that did undo everything that we had worked towards, to secure the border. And for your listeners, look, I joined in 1995. I worked for 5 administrations, and every administration had taken steps to secure the border except this one. It actually went backwards. It undid and stopped all the hard work. And that hard work was requirements from our agents, not bureaucrats, not elected officials, what the agents needed. And really, and the numbers don't lie. You see it go from just under 500,000 in 2020 to 1.5 million to 2.2 million to close to 3 million last year. This is policy driven straight out of the White House, and everybody got to see what those policies can do based on that viral video from Thursday that happened in El Paso, and somebody who spent a lot of his career in El Paso. It's just disgusting to see what this administration has done.
And the thing about El Paso, because I used to work at KVIA in El Paso, and I called them. They said, well, that video is from Thursday. It happened on Wednesday, too. So it wasn't just a one-day thing. It happened Wednesday and Thursday. But also, too, I think there's a financial incentive because we had so many people sleeping in tents outside of police stations. And the thing is, they were getting money for housing, but they were pocketing that money and sending it to their relatives to bring them here.
Yeah, well, you know what? Back to that event, that's been happening probably regularly in El Paso. Mm-hmm. It just so happened they had a reporter with their cameraman there that captured the whole thing at that specific time, because we know what happened later during the day. But again, they've gotten it back under control in that area, or at least limited the access. So we're not going to see that again, because something this administration is big on is securing their narrative and not securing the border. You heard that from the press secretary. I mean, look, if this kind of event happened in Washington, they'd call it an insurrection. If it happened at a concert, it'd be a riot. But it happens at the border, and they blame Republicans. They blame the state that is trying to do something about it. That's what they're going to do. And, it's ridiculous. This administration is about an immigration fix, not a border security fix. So just listen to what they say. They want to fix an immigration problem. That's facilitating more people in. It starts with securing the border. Then we can start working on who and what and when and where they come in. But it's got to be with a secure border first. Then we can open up the ports of entry to lawful pathways to kind of minimize some of this nonsense that's going on. But, yeah, it's actually hear what they don't say versus what they say.
Well, right. And the folly of Greg Abbott's responsible for what happened in El Paso while they're litigating the law that was signed, what he signed into law to deputize local law enforcement to essentially act in significant measure as border security. But that's, just attendant to the politics of the day. I wonder what your reaction is to the pronouncements that Trump has been making on the campaign trail that there's going to be, if he is elected, there's going to be a mass deportation program because there just has to be. Even if there is the desire to do that, how realistic is removing a significant portion of the, let's say 7 to 10 million people who've entered this country and have been allowed to enter this country illegally over the last 3 years? How realistic is that? Would the mechanics of it, what would be required in order to accomplish something like that?
Well, as far as logistics and getting it done, I mean, it could get done. I seriously doubt the political will be there from both sides of the aisle to support it in the manner that the president has been talking about. But there's also a Fourth and Fifth Amendment due process issue, because many of these people have been served notices to appear and are in a legal process.
Right.
That would be a problem. However, there is a large contingent of people that have been paroled in mass, which is what the flights coming from other countries, and that I think is still a constitutional issue. But the president of the United States does have the control to determine that parole. So I think the hundreds of thousands and close to millions of people that have been paroled that could be done with minimum impact or zero impact to any due process, because that parole is controlled by the executive. Those that have been placed in removal proceedings, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge because they have a right to due process under our Constitution. whether we like it or not, we do have to uphold the Constitution. So I think that there will be a message sent. I think if President Trump is elected and he starts doing that, that right there will shut things down because they know they're not going to get that multiple bite at the apple that they're given on this administration. But logistically, I mean, there's people out there that can go out there and make the arrest, but it will be an undertaking for sure.
Well, the parole program, that's a good example of what can be done immediately. And even with respect to processing asylum claims, adjudicating asylum claims, yeah, absolutely. If you follow the Constitution and provide due process. But that can also be done more expeditiously, perhaps with more immigration judges or whatever the stumbling blocks are in the system. There's no reason that these asylum cases have to go on for years and years, just like cases in our courts, generally speaking, in this country. So, there are fixes to that as well that still comport with, constitutional strictures. But I wanted to ask you about the parolee program because this has gotten some attention, and you talked about serving under 5 different presidents. Is what Biden has done unprecedented? The report of 300,000 plus migrants being flown at taxpayer expense from foreign lands to dropped off at some 43 different airports around the country. Has there ever been anything like that?
No, this is nothing like we've ever experienced or seen. That is taking a very limited and specific program and bastardizing it and just basically using it for their own good and for their own agenda. Look, paroling people in for humanitarian and limited interest of government, we've had that authority. I've used that authority for witnesses to parole them in to testify on behalf of the government in a crime. Mm-hmm. When you have certain things like a temporary protective status because something has happened in the source country or the home country and we can't get them back, it's very limited. Paroling people in because they claim they want to come to the United States for asylum or some kind of relief, and paroling, well, I think there's been over 300,000 flown in. I mean, that is an abuse of a system, an abuse of power, and I do think it's unconstitutional because that's creating a set demographic of people, and under immigration law, only Congress can do that. So I think it's gonna be very hard to uphold that in courts. We just got to get it there and challenge it. But that is one of those areas that the next president very much could shut down and remove every one of those parolees.
What's your reaction? I mean, we have this devolution into chaos, more chaos than usual in Haiti. I mean, that's a country of 11 million people. The Dominicans aren't letting them in. They have a border fence that they man with, and with some severity too, historically. So there's some talk about using Gitmo as a processing center for those who flee, and a lot of these Haitians are going to have legitimate asylum claims with respect to the violence that's going on there, political persecution potentially. We've heard from Ron DeSantis about scrambling his National Guard at sort of points of entry around the Florida coast. How do you think we should be thinking about the potential refugee crisis from Haiti that compounds what we've already inflicted upon ourselves at the border?
Yeah, so you bring up Haiti, which is a great example of where we should be, using asylum for those that do have to flee because of the uprising and the political, back and forth and just overtaking that's happened. That's a good use of asylum, not false claiming because you want to benefit here. So that's one thing. And the sad part is that we've overloaded the system the last couple of years. That's going to make it that much more challenging for them. But we should, you mentioned Gitmo. I think we should maximize that because that is something that is right there in the region. Let's go ahead and screen, vet, and ensure that those that are attempting to come in, especially if they're Haitian, that we vet them there and clear it there to make sure they're not part of the resistance, that we can maybe help them here and give them benefit. But also the Haitians have been, they're going to flee Haiti. They're going to get to Central America. They get into Costa Rica, and they're going to work their way up the pipeline and arrive at the United States and again, be back at our southern border and attempting to come in legally or illegally. I mean, this is, again, kind of the way that the process works. I think we do have to stand strong and support those that are, being persecuted. But at the same time, this is why we go back to the crux of we have to secure our border. We have to have the right policies in place, because when there is a crisis in the region where we want to be able to and should be able to help out to the extent possible, we've made it that much more challenging for people to accept and to be able to work through the process because of the 7, 8, 9 million people that have come in just in the last 3 years of this administration. So, it's going to be a challenge. And, one other thing on your that you stated is that every other country around the world steps up and has no problem securing their border, especially if there's something going on. Boy, when it's the United States, we try to do everything we can but secure that border. And I know it's frustrating for our law enforcement, for our men and women in the Border Patrol, and even the National Guard that's down there supporting. But we see it happen all around the world. But when it comes to the United States, boy, there's a half the country, or at least half the political spectrum wants to, duck their head in the sand and look the other way.
I mean, we look like a third world country. Good Lord.
Chris Clem, former
Well, you spent time in El Paso. El Paso is the community is set and set up to support lawful flow and controlled flow, even if it is illegal. They can do that. What we saw this last week and what we've been seeing over the last few years is just incredible. Even for a city like El Paso, which is a very large region at the southern border, it's tough for them to handle, and it's a lot of pressure on the city there. So sorry to cut you off, but that was just an important piece, because El Paso's been on the front line. Border Patrol started 100 years ago in El Paso, so they're very fond of their Border Patrol agents. But this administration has made it difficult on everybody.
Chris Clem, former Yuma, Arizona Sector Border Patrol Chief. Chris, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
I'm Frank Vance, co-owner of Egan Vance Insurance Agency on Chicago's Northwest Side and a customer of Signature Bank. In my line of work, we pride ourselves on being there for our clients when they need it the most.